You ever thought you're going to come in with, you ever think you're going to come in with something witty, and then immediately as soon as like you go live, you're like, wait, what was I going to say? You just got to see that happen live. Well, so the idea today is that we want to be able to make our training programs where we're not starting from a blank page. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was the worst place you can start building from is a blank page. So today, that's what we're going to look at, some strategies, some processes, and some tools that will help you make your content easy to be reused. So let's get going, folks. All right. A lot of times I get that feeling like, I got to build something and it's now time that, where am I starting from? Where am I going? And a lot of times I feel like I'm getting beat up, right? It's like I get a big old punch to the face and, right? So like the punch comes in and you're walking away and you're all bruised up. So I want to take that process away from you so that you're more apt to be able to find an easier way to build. So what we're going to look at today is some simple steps to walk ourselves through this process. So here's what we're going to look at. Basically the idea of creating reusable learning objects, right? RLOs, I think is the acronym used in the industry. I'm not the biggest fan of the idea of the reusable learning object. I like the word repurposable because the general idea is, with that reusable learning object, I think I'm a big fan that words matter. And so if we go and we say it's reusable, it means that if I heard that, it would be like, I can take it off the shelf from one place and put it into another place and I don't have to do anything else. But that's not the case, right? What we're going to do today is going to set us up for success, but it's not going to be like we're taking an item out of one, off of one shelf and we're putting it onto another and it's perfect and easy to use. So, the idea of repurposable is just going to make it a lot simpler for you. It's that we're going to set ourselves up to do this successfully, knowing for the fact that when it's time to reuse or repurpose that item, I got to put a little effort into it. But again, I'm not starting from that blank page. So I'd love to know how many people actually right now build with the idea of there's items that I'm building this so that I could possibly use it in the future. So let me know if you are or you're not in the comment section, and we'll be able to, we'll start working through this. All right. So going back to the agenda, basically we're going to look at some process. We're going to talk about structure, right? If you've been to these live streams before, structure is something that we definitely, I harp on, and it's because of this, right? How the way we write, the manner in which we write or create the material is going to help us in making it repurposable as well. But that is, again, that's where we're going to be going. And so let's jump off with right now. Let's talk about having a process, right? And I actually sat here this morning and over the last couple of days when I was kind of laying this out of, what's the best way to come into it? Because I think it's a 3-tiered approach, and it's not like we do a process and then we do we have a structure and it's how we write. They kind of are all kind of happening at the same time, and you've heard me all talk about my 90% rule, right? 90% of the time, this is how I do it. And this is one of the main reasons why I go this route. Because a lot of times when we come into the structure, which is going to be the next leg we're going to talk about, it's always there. This process is pretty much what I use all the time. And now this is just the way I go about it. And now what I'm doing is going to be easy. I can easily reuse it in different locations. All right. So first step of the process. And I like to think, if we can't bring in prior treasure maps into our training, are we really having a training? But I like this treasure map as a great visual aid or, analogy of the process, right? So the first place, where are we trying to get to, right? Stephen Covey's second habit, begin with the end in mind. So what is that? What's our X? What are we trying to get to, right? So if we know where we're trying to get to, we have a better chance of navigating our way there. So one, know where we're going. Number two, where are we starting from, right? So in my example here, where's the pirate ship? That's where we're starting from. So if we know where we're going and we know where we're starting from, now we can navigate a chart, we can navigate our course, work our way around obstacles, and get to where we want to be, right? So my process, know where we're going, have where we're coming from, and then the last one is, what are our deliverables? And let me get rid of this treasure map because it's confusing me. I just like staring at it. So at the end, what are we trying to get? What do we have to turn in at the end of the project, right? So are we building e-learning? And so we need to have some e-learning modules, or we need to have, we're doing micro-learnings. Is it instructor-led training or virtual instructor-led training? So do we need guidebooks? Do we need workbooks for participant workbooks? Do we need handouts? Do we need job aids? Right? Having an understanding of all the different items that we need to do will set us up once we actually start building, so that we can set up our structure to help us get to that location, or to get there in the least amount of steps, right? The idea of, we build training with the idea of we want to get the people what they need to do and nothing more. Same idea in terms of actually developing your material. We want to use what we have and get to that final location, to the final deliverables, in the least amount of steps with the least amount of work. All right, simple enough. That's the process. Know where we're going, know where we're starting, and know what we have to have at the end. What are our deliverables? All right, so after that, let's use structure to help us out. And we're actually going to flip over and show a little of this in action in a few moments. And if for people who've seen many of my live streams, or feel free to dive back into the YouTube channel and go through the other ones. Throughout these, I've been layering in these items, right? So it's, we've talked about structure, we've talked about formatting, we've talked about layout, and guess what? I'm going to keep talking about it because it's so important. But that's the idea. We're going to use structure to help us out. So first place is have a hierarchy. Right? So I always use the high school essay example, right? We're writing out a paper, and you lay out your outline, right? So we have Roman numerals, we have uppercase letters, we have, numbers as we're working down that hierarchy, so that which pieces you can pull from this. So to put this in an example, let's say and I'm going to go back to my customer service example that I tend to always go to. But let's say we're building a training on customer service, right? So within the program of customer service, we're going to have, or maybe let me back this. Let's say our program is new hire training, and one of our modules, which would be our Roman numeral, is customer service. Within customer service, we have a lesson, or our Roman, an uppercase letter on, phone etiquette, we have one on email etiquette, we have one on handling customer complaints. So we're working our way down through that. And now within, handling customer complaints, there is a piece, now we're into that third level of our hierarchy of, there's one on, irate customers in the store, there's ones on the phone, there's one in email, and how do we handle all those things? So we've got this structure in place, and now later on, you're building out training on something, let's say something along the lines of email etiquette, or email. I'm drawing a blank, folks, today. I'm sorry, but so we're building out a piece where that one section on, upset emails, people that have written bad email, or complaints in email. So we're doing a program on complaints. There we go. It took me a moment, but we're going to do a short program on complaints. And now we want to pull that piece of how to handle an upset or handle a complaint in email. I can now go into that virtual training or that instructor-led training or that e-learning that I've scripted out and pull that individual piece out and use it. So that's the hierarchy of a structure. That's right. Our structure is getting us to, it's working. The course goal is being driven through by the modules and lessons that we teach, or topics and subtopics, whichever one you want to use. Right. That the overall course goal is getting us to business objectives. But if we can pull individual pieces out of these, right? So the building blocks that make up customer service, the one on, upset emails or email complaints can now be pulled out and used in a different program about, complaints itself, right? So that's the idea, is we build it in a way that we can pull individual pieces or larger pieces to that, or at least they're built in a way that they can be pulled and put somewhere else. Not everything that you build is going to become repurposable or will be repurposed, but it should be set up in a way that it could be if you need to. All right, so hierarchy, first level. After that, formatting, how we lay things out, right? How do we lay things out on the page? Where do things go? If we do it consistently, it's going to make it easier. And this one will make more sense in a few moments when I actually dive into this. But formatting will play a role within the whole structure itself. After formatting, have a style guide, right? What fonts do we use? What does my body text look like? What size is my headline text? So that whatever you're doing, when you build it out, if we pull a piece from one document, that I can easily drop it into another document and not have a lot of work to go. And, for those who use Word or, really any desktop publishing program, there are ways that you can go in and set it up so that you assign styles to your text so that when it goes in, you don't have to go and say, I want this portion to be Alhambra font at 14 points with blue color and all this. You set that on the style, and then it will drive it into the document. So again, we'll show that in just a few moments. So styles. And lastly, how do we organize stuff? What's our organization? So one within the document, but more so organization-wise, how do we lay out, how do we set ourselves up for success in terms of file management, naming conventions? Where do we load things in? And so again, this one will make more sense in a few moments, but those are the big things, right? So hierarchy, formatting, a stylistic look, style guides, and how do we set that up so it's easy to do, and how do we organize ourselves? And we're going to use structure is going to matter in all of those. All right, lastly, let's look at how we write the material matters, right? And I like using that term matters, right? You've heard me, terminology matters, word matters, mechanics matter, right? Because what we choose and how we do it truly plays a role in whether things are successful or not. So I like the word matters. But so how we write stuff out is key, right? It's gonna be very, very helpful or very harmful if we do it wrong. So first one, don't assume, right? Let's not make assumptions, right? We all know what happens when we make assumptions. We won't go into that, that trope or cliche, whatever you want to call it. But, so we're not going to make assumptions. So don't assume everybody knows what you're talking about, right? Or if we're bringing in information from subject matter experts, don't assume that everyone else who's going to be getting this information knows it all. So if we want something to happen, we need to write it down. Which actually brings us to our next point. Be complete. We want to write everything out clearly, concisely, and completely, right? If we take the idea that our training materials are an asset of the organization, and in many ways an insurance policy for the organization, we want to make sure everything's written down. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, what are the 7 key elements of great customer service for XYZ company? And then there's nothing written down. Like, I may know 5 of them. Jane, who's a superstar, knows 7. Bob knows like 2. So if we want to make sure people know what to do, we want to know what those 7 key things are, write them down. Don't assume someone knows them, right? And so a lot of these things are going to kind of play off each other. But so we're not making assumptions. We want to write clearly, concisely, and completely. We want to write to our audience, right? So if we'll use the example of facilitator guides. We're writing a facilitator guide that's going to be, it's going to have it's a facilitator guide for a virtual program, and one of our deliverables outside of a facilitator guide is that we're going to want to have a participant guide, right? So with those kind of things in mind, when I start breaking things up within my hierarchy, and I get into what I would call those content blocks, right? The says, the do's, the asks, the show this video, all of those things. Like, if it's something I want the facilitator to say, when I give them their headline for say, like say this or say exactly, I'm going to write that material in the voice of the participant, in the voice of the facilitator. But if I'm now going to write something, let's say we're going to be doing an activity, I'm going to write the information for the activity in the voice of the final audience member, which would be the participant. For me, activities are going to go into my participant workbook. So I want to write it in the facilitator guide in a way that when I pull that piece out and I drop it into my participant workbook, I don't have to rework the material, right? I can provide additional cues in my facilitator guide that would be facilitator only, but I'm writing the material towards the intended audience member, right? And if I can do that, and if I know, and this comes back to the structure, and actually we'll come into my last point of be consistent. But if we're going to, if there's certain types of material that always is going to be in a participant workbook and a facilitator guide, right? So for me, like an activity, a key point, both of those are things that are both in my facilitator guides and in my participant books. I'm going to write it in the final audience member, the participant, so that when I pull that piece, it's reusable, and I put it from the facilitator and I put it into my participant book, I don't have to rework it. And now I know in my structure, in my process, I'll give additional information in the facilitator guide that's going to provide additional cues for that activity. Like, while this activity is going on, do X, Y, and Z in a clear and concise manner. So that's, if you look back at when I talk about formatting and I use those column structures, right? Third column, I'm going to put in facilitator-only cues that they don't necessarily need to get across to the participant. And actually, I think I have, hopefully this one's the right one. All right, so here's an example, right there. So in the example for how could the supervisor have said the same thing without sounding condescending, I've provided a cue for the facilitator in that third column, listen for, and then provide a few examples, right? This was an example, I would have actually written out the examples. When I did this in one of the prior trainings, I was, kind of showing this idea. All right. But so the last one is consistency, right? Be consistent. How we lay things out, right? In consistency, take that my 90% rule. 90% of the time, we do this. But we're going to be consistent on the types of content blocks we use or how we break things out. What we, say this, do this, ask this, key points, all of those things. Headlines that we use. If I want the facilitator to say something or, get the general idea across, I'll use something like say something like, where if I need them to read something verbatim, maybe I actually use read verbatim or read. And the more I consistently use the same ideas, the same wordings for headlines, my facilitators know what to do. They can glance down, they can get the information, and they can be right back to it. Or if I'm building out e-learnings, I consistently lay things out the same way so that, if I'm storyboarding this, when I go to develop it, I know exactly what I'm doing because I know what to expect. Or if I storyboarded it and it's going to somebody else for development, they know what to expect. All right, so let me clear these off. It looks like Megan has put something in the chat, so let's see what this. Megan, activity written for the learner, speaker notes for the facilitator. Am I grasping this? Yes. The idea being that it comes back to that, in the process, what are my deliverables? So if I have to, if I'm building a facilitator guide and a participant guide and maybe some job aids as, the end result of, that's the end result of my training or my development. This is what we're going to have before we go into piloting and things like that. For me, activities, it's something that I want that's going to happen during the training, whether it's virtual, whether it's live, live classroom. So it's going to be in my facilitator guide. But generally, I'm going to put my activities into my participant workbook as well, because there's stuff maybe they have to capture. We want them to have the instructions. So if for whatever reason, if we were projecting stuff up onto a slide during the show and, the slide goes kaput or the computer goes kaput, we still have the information in their hand. It's something they could reference back to. So for me, activities go into both facilitators as well as participant books. And then if that's the case, I would write the material for the activity in a voice that would work for the participant, and then use some side notes for if I had to get additional information across to get the additional information across to the facilitator. Hope that makes sense, Megan. If not, reach out to me. We can meet and we can go over it. All right. So I think we went through all of those, right? How to write. We did assume, don't assume, be complete, write towards your audience, and then be consistent. All right. And if you guys know, for those who, as I've been going through this live stream, a lot of times, a lot of the layout you're seeing is very similar, right? The words are changing, right? What I'm putting down beneath. But I'm trying, for developing these live streams, I've only got so much time. I got everything else to do between, work and kids and softball and dogs and all that stuff. So there's only so much time I have to put into kind of flushing these things out. So the more I can set things up that are easily repeatable, or I can go in and I can change the headlines that shoot across the bottom or the words that come on the page, I'm making this repurposable, right? I still have to go in and make edits to make so it comes in, each time will be, it gives the proper information, but I'm not having to recreate the wheel each and every time. So these concepts work their way through. It's also why I've been trying to kind of move, I tried to shift the way this live stream went, right? I always try to end now with that Q&A segment so that we can address those address questions that come up. But you know what, the reason I also did this was that I have the ability to now, I haven't done it yet, but ideally I can go in now and I can take the recording of these live streams and I can pull this information and I can, cut out the piece. If I want to grab just, from the 5-minute mark to the 7-minute mark, I could, and now I could repurpose that as a short video. Or I could, all the scripting and all that stuff that I've written out, I can repurpose this as a blog. Or I could take the transcript of this, right? So it's kind of, I've set myself up down the line where if I want to start harvesting stuff out of what I've done, I'm not starting from scratch. And that's the whole idea is, it's not necessarily that you're going to be doing this right now, but you want to lay the groundwork so you can do it at some point down the line, right? And that you're not having to go back and be like, man, I really wish I did that one differently. So it's keeping that long game in mind. All right, so we have Liz, thank you for joining from Music City down in Nashville. Always a pleasure to have you. Let's come back to Megan. I think my missing link has been the participant book. I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. You're welcome. It's actually something. So I go through, I set these things up. I write out my ideas. I then start kind of laying out my plan. I run through it a couple times, and I swear, when I go through the run-throughs, I almost wish maybe one time I don't do the run-through, because I think they actually run smoother, because you just get a little bit, I feel like you get a little bit more of my personality in it. there's a lot more of me like laughing at stupid stuff I do. I like to make jokes, right? Like if I can bring in a pirate ship, wrong button. If I can bring in a pirate ship or a treasure map, I'm going to, right? Or if I can put on, some of these Snapchat filters, I'm going to do those type of things, right? I want my personality to come through. I want my, maybe a little bit of irreverence to come through. But don't take that as I don't take my job seriously. Like, I could talk, well, I do talk about this a lot, but it's so important. But no one wants to talk about structure. No one wants to talk about guidebooks, because guess what? It's not sexy. It's not exciting. Well, most people don't find it exciting. So I feel like I got to try to bring more to it, and which to me is just be more of myself and my stupidness. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm glad you find insights in it. Let's see, what else do we have? The template. I'm glad you like the template, Liz. I think it's awesome. I think more people should use it, and I'm always willing to talk about that. And let's see what else. For training classes, practice is the key and is critical for success. It is. Absolutely for training, practice, right? Repetition. For live streams, I don't know. Obviously having brain farts, all those things where you're like, I want to say, those type of things, they happen, but I think it also kind of gets the point across. Now, if I was going to cut this down into a short video, absolutely. You want to narrow it down and get right to the point. But in this, at least for me, I like ones where it's a little bit more, you get what you get, and if the dog comes in and it starts staring at the fish or starts barking, like that's just what life is. And I like it. Not everyone does. And if you don't, let me know, and I can always make adjustments. But all right. So we did say I want to kind of show a little bit of this in practice. I know we're already at the 27-minute mark. I like to kind of be around 30 minutes. My guess is we'll probably be a little bit closer to 40 today. But let's jump over real quick to this is one of the page I wanted to show you, but seeing we're on here, here's the shameless plug. Obviously, we stream this into LinkedIn. I also stream it into YouTube because YouTube's a lot easier to find after the fact. And if you haven't already, if you could subscribe, that would be great. If I can get to 100 subscribers, I get a little bit more, some more things. I can actually brand this page to my name versus a whole series of numbers and letters. So that would be great. So that's shameless plug today. But let me actually pop over here. I want to come into Word. All right. So the idea of, and I'm going to quickly bounce around, right? Because this is one of the things, I never thought I had ADD until I started doing live streams, and now I actually think I may. My mind's all over the place. But coming back to this, I want to talk a little bit about the structure, about hierarchy, about formatting, about styles, right? So that's what we're going to be looking at, but we're going to use Word as this example. So I'm just going to quickly here, I've laid it out. I have it at my quick parts, and I think in one of the videos, my top five things you need to use in Word. We talked about this, but I've actually, I'm going to insert in a structure, right? I've gone in, I've got a program, a title. I broke it down, my hierarchy, program or title, modules, lessons, and then within lessons, I like to break it out into content parts. But one of the things you can do in using this structure, and it comes down to that idea of styles, what you will have, and I'll come to the home tab so you can see it. You have a styles section, right? So it's the styles gallery. You can go through, and I've created some of my own, and one of these days I'll actually dig into styles deeper because it's such a key point. But I've gone through and I've set up, what I call my heading 1, which is, and you can actually see it right here. My heading 1, If I go to my lesson, it's my heading 2, which are those. And then if actually within here, if I actually added some text, which I will real quick, right? You'll see I've set up my body text, right? So I've set up some styles within here, because what it's going to allow me to do, if we think about this about being repurposable, let's say I start building out, I'm going to put in a headline here. So let's say I'm going to use a headline within my first lesson called Key Point. And here, let me shift this over so you can see it. And just for ease, I'm going to bring in my style box. Where did it go? There it is. So I actually want this to be this key point here. Bring this over so you can see it better. I want it to be a headline text. So again, I've gone in, I've set up what my headline text is, and I can click on that and I can apply it. Right? And now I could go through, and let's say I wanted to say something like, right, there's a headline, and then after that I'm going to have some random text. Right? I can go through, I can apply the style. Right? And I'm just going to insert a page break. We're going to scroll down. I'm now going to, let's say in lesson 2.1, I want to have another key point, and this is the text. Right? And I can go through and I can make this headline text. Right? And let's say I have an activity. Right? Just so you can kind of see this flushing out. So you notice, like, I'm using the structure. Right? So I've got modules, lessons, all of those type of things. So let me close out of this. Now, because I've got this structure in place, right, and I'm using styles, which are heading 1s and heading 2s, easy enough. I want to put in a table of contents at the beginning of this or let's say I want a table of contents after my table, like my title page. So let's say I could put in a big image here. Right? I'm just going to draw in a shape as to represent an image. But like picture this was an image on the cover page, and then I wanted to have a table of contents on page 2. Because I've used a structure, heading 1s, heading 2s, I've applied styles to those, I can just go over to the References tab, and I can insert a table of contents. Right? And now it's pulled that information in. Right? And maybe I'm going to have, like, this is going to be another page. Right? And let's just update this real quick. Well, here we'll do update table. So everything goes through and applies. And now this is all in place. By having that structure also in place, if I was to come under view, I want to open up my navigation pane, I could actually reorder things. Like maybe I actually wanted module 2 to happen above module 1. I could drag those, and now it's making those changes. Or if I just wanted to take out module 2 and bring it into another document, I could. So the structure that we use is going to make your life a lot easier, right? If you put a structure into place and how things work, you're now going to be able to start repurposing things to make it easier, right? As an example, let's just say I had gone in, I'm going to copy, cut that out, right? We're going to imagine this is a new document. I put it in this place. Well, if I now want to go through and change what let's say what was my body text or my headline text, I want it to look different. I don't like, it shouldn't be this font or it shouldn't be this color. Simple enough. Instead of having to go through in my document every place, highlight text, come over to the home tab, apply whatever look and feel I wanted off the ribbon, what I can do for the entire document, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to go into my styles pane, and I want to update my headline text. I'm going to modify it. And now let's say I want it to be Magneto, and I want it to be red, right? I can go through, I make those choices. I'm going to click OK. And now every place in this document that was using my headline text style is now updated. So that is in there. So I could pull a piece from one document and bring it into another. And as long as I'm still using the same styles, I can quickly brand the entire document with the look and feel that I want. So you have those type of things, right? If you start using, if you were to go in and use one of our tools that allow you to do this, like I could come through in here and I could start putting in, all the different blocks that I needed, right? And I could add in text, whatever that is, right? And so in this case, here's my first lesson. And now maybe I wanted to have a new lesson in my document. I can go in, I can insert that next lesson, call it lesson 2, right? And now I'm now able to insert in the blocks that I need here, whatever those are, add the different, it actually was wanting me to get a picture because that's the one I chose, but so let's do it. All right, so let's add in a picture. That's come in. I can go through, I can add in all the different things I needed. But later on, let's say I wanted just this, I just want lesson 2 to use somewhere else. Great. I can come over and I can archive out that specific lesson. I can archive out that module or lesson. And in here, I can just choose what I want, right? So lesson 2, I can save it out. And just for ease, let's put this into my downloads folder. Click save, right? So the actual Word document that I'm using, which is built with Leader Guide Pro, right? That's got a module page. It's got 2 lessons within it. But now if I come over here, let me just send this over the better way so it comes in easier. Right? If I go to my downloads folder, which I just saved that one piece, I can just pull out that one individual piece. So within our tools, we've taken the concept of the structure and we've added so many automations to make your life even easier. But you're able to do those type of things. Tool or no, our tool or no, not our tool, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And the last item I want to talk about real quickly was that last item here, and let me pop over to it, was organization, right? How do we lay things out? How do we name things? So with that, I'm going to jump back over to my files and folders or File Explorer. And so, one of the things to think about, especially to make things easy to repurpose, is what are our naming conventions? How do we name images? How do we name documents? Where do we store them? What folder structure do we use? Right. So for my pictures, and I like, in this case, here's an example. Like, I've got pictures, and these are all some of the different tools that we offer to sell, and I've done screenshots of them of processes of how to activate the licenses. Right, so I've gone in, I put in a folder for, these are my activation, it's in my activation folder, and within there, I now have each of these different programs. So let's say if I go into here, now I can get into those individual images, right? Which allows me, and it doesn't have to be images, it could be Word documents, things like that. I can go into, if I need to make changes, let's say a picture changes, my screenshot's changed, I can go in, make the new screenshot, and I know exactly where to drop it. If you in the session we did on working with pictures, I showed you how we can go through and if you link your pictures versus embed your pictures or versus doing both, how we can do this. So if you've got a structure in how you do that and pictures change and you have them both linked and embedded, we can now just change the image and that bring in the new image, name it the same as the old image, and your documents are going to update as long as you have access to where those images are located. So structure and how we organize things play such a huge role in how we repurpose materials. All right. So yeah, we've gone probably deeper than I probably should have. Liz, she practices for live streams. I do too. I actually am just thinking that I could actually one, I probably should practice more, but two, I feel like when I practice, I sometimes feel like it becomes a little bit too canned and you don't get as, I guess, as candid ideas as you could. And then let's see, lastly, and be spontaneous too. Absolutely. So again, Liz, great person to check out on Wednesdays for live streams. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to, it doesn't look like, we talked about, looks like we captured most of the questions that have come in, but takeaways, look at having a process. Make sure you have a structure that works, that you use 90% of the time, right? And that 90% is your always. And it's just for those few times where you need to break the rules, you do so. But we're not breaking rules just to break rules. And then keep in mind, what we write and how we write matters. We actually, let me set this up real quick because I have this also here. The other item that I had set up here, I'm going to share my screen again. We just released a blog on this, which is going to probably in a lot more concise and a lot better structure than the live stream, but in more in depth in places. There is, going through this process. We're actually the blog's actually going to be a 2-part process. The first one's talking about structure. So that's there. I will put this link into the chats. Let me just pull that up here. If I can get to the right one. So that's in the chats. So if you guys want to access that blog article, you can. And that will go into YouTube's as well. But with that being said, it doesn't look like a lot of questions other than the ones that we've already came up. But anytime you have questions, even after the fact, if you're watching this after the fact, type in your questions, put them in the comments, and I will come back and answer them. And if you need me, there's my email, there's my phone. Please reach out. I'm happy to help. With that, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys all next week. All right? Take care, folks.